Okay, so we are live, Maharaj, and I will share the verse on the screen.
I have a question.
Yes, Maharaj?
Are we also streaming live on YouTube?
Yes, yes.
So there may be people in attendance that I'm not aware of then.
Yes, Maharaj. For now, it's just seems like it's just two of us in the ashram in the Zoom, and then whoever may be listening on YouTube.
Oh, we don't know who that is.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
So, so I'm not sure of my audience.
Yeah, anyway, just Josh and I seem to be coming to class this week, but on YouTube, Maharaj, we don't know who may be listening.
Out of consideration for the juiciness of today's verse, there's so much packed in. I am going to um, restrain myself from singing Jai Radha Madhava because there's just really a lot to talk about in each of these verses. So I'll just go ahead and start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning, we'll take a look at Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, I'm fiddling with things I shouldn't be fiddling with here. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, questions by the sages. And today we'll discuss text 6. So the verse itself is Savai pungsang paro dharmo yato bhaktiradhokshaje ahaitukya pratihataya yatma suprasidati. Srila Prabhupada's translation and purport. The supreme occupation, or dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In this statement, Sri Sutta Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part so that the fallen people or the people in general might easily take it up. The Vedas prescribe two different types of occupation for the human being. One is called the pravritti marg, or the path of sense enjoyment, and the other is called nivritti marg, or the path of renunciation. The path of enjoyment is inferior, and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. The material existence of the living being is a diseased condition of actual life. Actual life is spiritual existence or Brahmabhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of miseries. There's no happiness at all. Um, there is just the futile attempt to get rid of the miseries, and the temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable, and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to eternal, blissful, and all-cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Renunciation or abnegation for the ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in the diseased condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality, that is, without the least desire for material enjoyment. One should therefore accept the superior quality of occupation in the form of the devotional service of the Lord without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruitive action, and philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to the perpetual solace in his service. We have purposely denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is that which sustains one's existence. A living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities with his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Krishna is the central pivot of living beings, and he is the all-attractive living entity or eternal form amongst all other living beings or eternal forms. Each and every living being has his eternal form in spiritual existence, and Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. Krishna is the complete whole, and everything else is his part and parcel. The relation is one of the servant and the served. It is transcendental and is completely distinct from our experience in material existence. This relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. One can realize it as devotional service progresses. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditional stage of material existence. That will gradually give one the clue to actual life and to please him to complete satisfaction. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukhaṁ karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim Yat kripatamaham bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Svamaniti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatide Shatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Text again. Savai pungsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir dadho kshaje ahoy tukya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. The supreme occupation or dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So there really is an awful lot in this verse. It's not a long verse. It's in Anushtup, which is the simplest and most common of the chandas or poetic meters that are used in the Shastras. But there's so much going on here. So one thing is paradharma. Well, actually, yeah, let's start there. So parodharma. Parodharma or paradharma is the ultimate. Prabhupada gives it as para as sublime, but this is the ultimate. Sometimes we read dharma as duty, sometimes we read it as religion, and Srila Prabhupada points out in his purport that he's giving dharma as occupation. Occupation for a few reasons. One is it's what we do. Occupation means what we do, how we occupy ourselves, the things that we do. But Srila Prabhupada takes it a step further. And he says these are the, an occupation is something that we do to sustain our existence, to sustain our lives. So in conditioned life, in life in the material world, we think of that as our job or the business that we run or something like that. This is what I do to sustain my existence in this world, in this particular lifetime. As the bumper sticker says, I owe, so off to work I go. So Srila Prabhupada is bringing it to the very finest point. He says we purposely denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is that which sustains one's existence. Now, we've already established that the Srimad Bhagavatam has one topic. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and those things that are directly related to him, his devotional service, and those devotees who engage in that devotional service. And we're talking about Shuddha Bhakti, or pure devotional service, or Uttama Bhakti, as it's given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ultimate in devotional service. And what makes it that? Because as we see in the second verse of the Bhagavatam, it is for the lessons of the Bhagavatam are particularly intended for those who have already rejected, just as Krishna says at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he tells Arjuna toward the end of the 18th chapter, he tells Arjuna, please pay attention. I'm going to tell you something. This is for your benefit, and you really need to note it. And then he says something that he said previously in the 9th chapter, at the end of the 9th chapter, right smack in the middle of the Gita. And that 9th chapter of the Gita is called the most confidential knowledge. And Krishna starts out that chapter by saying, okay, I'm going to tell you something that's really confidential. This is really meant for a very particular audience. And he builds through the chapter a glorifying, progressively glorifying bhakti. To the point where he says near the end of the chapter that if someone's only goal in life is to serve me, they don't have any other goal. They don't want to go to heaven. They don't want to merge into this indefinite, this indistinct spiritual existence. They don't want, that their real goal in life is not to get ahead in this world, not to get more comfortable in this world, not to make money, not to get all the girls, not to get all the pieces on the chessboard or whatever. None of that. Um, he says, um, Kaitava dharma prauchita. So at the end of the, so anyway, so at the end of the 18th chapter, so at the, well, so I've really gotten ahead of myself and I've started to spin out into about 12 different directions at once, and I need to reel it back in because these verses are just so full of meaning. So at the end of the ninth chapter, toward the end of the ninth chapter, he says, even if someone who has this as their only real goal completely blows it, still, we need to consider that person saintly because, as he says in the next verse, because of the power of that bhakti, that intention for bhakti, they become purified, even of whatever residual gunk might be left in their hearts. Bhakti has this great power to purify us of any residual um, behavior based on desires that we might have previously cultivated. And then at the very end of the chapter, he says, here's the most confidential knowledge. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Manmana, engage your mind always in thinking about me. Manmana bhava madbhakta, become devoted to me. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji, sacrifice, worship me, sacrifice everything for me. Mam namaskuru, whatever obeisance we offer, whatever respect we offer, it really meant for me. In other words, what he's, well, when he says mam namaskuru, some of our teachers have read that as meaning offer yourself completely, make yourself the offering, make our very lives the offering. So ultimately, what he's saying is the most confidential knowledge is just to love me wholeheartedly, as Jesus says in the New Testament, with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then at the end of the 18th chapter, he says, okay, we've talked about so many things here. I've argued, I've presented arguments from so many different angles of vision. But now, please buckle up, please pay attention. And because I'm telling you this for your benefit. And then he says the same thing. He says, this is the most confidential of all confidential knowledge. He says the same thing again. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Just love me and you'll come to me. You will attain me if you give your love to me. I promise you this because you're my friend, you're my devotee. And then he tells us what that looks like in action, right? Because love means activity. Love means service. A mother's love for her children is expressed in the service that she gives to her children. She nurses them, bathes them, clothes them. She and daddy and the aunties and uncles, they teach the child how to speak. They coach the child in how to walk. They encourage everything. This is all service. Just as many of our moms, um, may have expressed in times when we seem not to appreciate all the service they give. David Letterman, the famous comedian, when he used to talk about his mom, he would just say, his mom's response to the lack of appreciation that she might see in her kids was, I give and give and give, and this is the thanks I get. My mom's was, I work my fingers to the bone, and this is the thanks I get. But that doesn't mean mom's going to stop working her fingers to the bone, or that Dave's mom is going to stop giving and giving and giving, because that's the nature of a mother. I mean, I saw this even when my mother was dying. She started writing a note to me. She never finished it. And I know, unfortunately, no longer have that. She started a draft of it on a yellow legal pad. And, after she passed away, I got it. And she, my divine, what was it? Like something like my divine baby. And she started pouring her heart out to me, trying to explain, how much I meant in her life. So love means giving. Love means service. It means activity. So how does Krishna describe that activity in the very next verse in the Bhagavad Gita? Well, perhaps one of the more famous verses in the Gita. Uh, uh, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. Aham tvang sarvapapebhyo mokshaishyami ma shuchah. Says, don't worry. Don't worry, even if you incur some sin by following this instruction, which is whatever we've talked about, all the different aspects of dharma, conventional dharma that we've talked about. Because when we talk about dharma, we, especially, and we often use the term swadharma, one's own duty, one's own occupation. We use that swadharma to express different things. So my swadharma as a dad was to provide, uh, to help provide for my wife and children, to find some way to contribute to society so that they would remunerate me by giving me money to take care of my wife and our children, our home. As a sannyasi, I have a different swadharma. It's to make myself available to the whole world to help people understand what bhakti yoga means. But then, and as a teacher, as a professor, my swadharma was to help my students understand better each week um, how thoughtful writing works, how to read it, and how to use it to express our own experience. There was my syllabus for, God, 20 years or more included a quotation from a famous English professor at the University of New Hampshire who had, before he was a professor, had been a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist for the Boston Globe, Don Murray. And he had what he called a definition of a writer that I really liked. He says, a writer is an individual who uses language to explore meaning in experience and communicate it. And so this was my swadharma as a professor, as a teacher, to help my students understand how people use language to explore meaning and experience and to share that. Now, as an and so I was going to say as an atman, as a soul, I guess, as a spark of loving consciousness related to the supreme whole, to the supreme fire. I have a different swadharma, and we also use the word atma on different levels. Sometimes atma means the body, sometimes it means the mind, and sometimes it means the jiva itself, that eternal spark of loving consciousness. So the dharma of the atma is to have what Srila Prabhupada refers to as a congenial relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I was listening to someone speaking the other day. I'm trying to remember who it was. And they were talking about something like this, having this congenial relationship with I actually have the note somewhere. Let me see if I can find that really quickly because I really liked it. Oh, this was Bhakti Vijnana Goswami. This was a ISKCON Leadership Sangha presentation that he gave some years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, about something that he and some other devotees in the Russian-speaking world were developing called the Japa Meditation School. And he says there's 5 core principles of Shastra-based education. One is authoritativeness. It has to be based on Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Practicability. It needs to be, we need to be able to apply it. We need to be able to realize it by practice. A systematic approach, in other words, presenting it in a way that it's going to connect with other people. Um, we need to understand what other, just as I opened up by worrying about who's my audience, we want to understand the nature of the people that we're sharing our bhakti with, or whatever knowledge it is we have, right? We want to have an understanding of where they're at so that we know how to connect them, kind of bring them along closer to the goal. The fourth was openness, a non-dogmatic approach based on using our intelligence and appealing to other people's intelligence. And then there was the personal approach. This is a heart-to-heart interaction between teacher and student, and this, it seems to be the wrong darn list. I was watching, it was a video by this lady, Chitta Shakti, Dr. Chetna Kang. She's a psychiatrist. And she was talking about a collaborative relationship with the divine. So that's a different list. I get lost in my lists sometimes, if I can even remember what they are. So this bhakti is a collaborative relationship. Prabhupada calls it this most congenial relationship. That if we can subordinate our needs, try to meet our needs in a way that actually gives satisfaction to the Supreme Personality of God, that's our real need. Our real need is that collaborative, congenial relationship with the absolute truth. That's love, means giving. And so after, Krishna says, wraps the, this is kind of his final instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. Just forget everything else and just take shelter in me. And even if there's some fault incurred in doing so, some apparent material fault incurred in doing so, don't worry about it because I can cover that. It's not something that's going to actually create um, ripples in the rest of the world that'll harm anybody or bring any harm to you as a result in the future. So this is the Paradharma, Bhakti Yoga. And this is one of the places where Srimad Bhagavatam draws this very distinct line, very bright line between bhakti and everything else. And the other thing is, what is this paro bhakti and how is it a haituki and a apratihata? Watching the clock here, because we really have a lot to discuss. And what we're talking about is, as I mentioned earlier, Shuddha Bhakti or Uttama Bhakti, as it's presented in the beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, as ongoing activity that's meant, intended entirely for giving pleasure to Krishna. Completely apart from everything else, rejecting as we see in the second verse of the Bhagavatam, which picks up after that 66th verse of the last chapter of the Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityaja. So the Bhagavatam says, Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. This is a text that's meant for those who are satam, those who are pure in heart. And as I perhaps too often for some people's tastes point out, they're pure at heart because they're nirmatsaranam. They don't envy anyone else. They don't hanker after what other people have. They don't covet in Bible language. They don't covet other people's position or possession or association or anything like that. Um, they don't have any self-interest. They don't have their own agenda. Their whole agenda is pleasing Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada makes that point in his purport, in this purport. Now, Prabhupada opens his purport by saying this answers the first question of the sages. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur opens his commentary by saying it answers the second question of the sages. So let's go back and take a look at those questions. I'm going to zip back to the end of the first chapter where these six purposes are laid out in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. The first question was, please explain what's most beneficial for humanity. The second, please tell those of us who have faith what the essence of all the scriptures is, by which the intellect can actually be pleased. So here's this using our intelligence, right? This non-dogmatic approach. Because Shukadev, as we'll see, especially Shukadev's Goswami's audience, and the same with Sutta Goswami's audience, is a very broad array of sagacious personalities. They're not all Hare Krishna people. They're all transcendentalists who understand transcendence, and some of them may even be engaged in the karma kanda, in in pursuing material existence, pursuing progress in the material world. So there's addressing a very broad audience, so we need to have this non-dogmatic approach. So although it may seem sometimes in Srimad Bhagavatam as though there may be other subjects and there may be other ideas presented, those are always presented as a contrast to bhakti, to point out the unique position of bhakti above, beyond, outside of every other experience. So there's a sense in which this verse actually does address both questions. What's the most beneficial thing for humanity? What's the essence of all the scriptures? The essence of all the scriptures is pure bhakti yoga, unmotivated, ahaituki. And unmotivated doesn't mean there's no motivation. It means without material motivation. So it doesn't, it's not mixed with a desire for becoming comfortable in this world, nor with a desire to attain the kind of mystic siddhis that we might get as byproducts of a yoga practice, which is ultimately meant for connecting with the super soul. It's not meant for levitation. It's not meant for bringing pomegranates from Afghanistan, as Srila Prabhupada mentions somewhere. Not meant for any of those things. And it's not meant for merging our sense of existence with this undifferentiated sense of spirit. But actually, it's meant for individually engaging our spiritual self, our spiritual ego, in trying to give pleasure to the ultimate spiritual person. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur particularly addresses this in his commentary, this ahaituki apratihata. Ahaituki means, hetu, it means causeless, means cause. So ahaituki means without a cause. And what it's really saying is without a cause other than itself. And in his commentary on this verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes a very extended argument, saying, we can't really say that that bhakti has some cause other than bhakti. Even though Lord Chaitanya says, and he cites verses to support this, says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the root cause of devotional service is the association of devotees. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, well, we can't really say that the association of devotees is the cause of bhakti because the association of devotees is bhakti. It's one of the five most powerful aspects of bhakti, sadhu sangha, associating with devotees who share our interest, who share our goal, which is pure devotion for Krishna, who are affectionately disposed toward us and who ideally are more advanced than we are, so that we can follow in their wake. So you can't really say that's a cause because that's actually bhakti. So what we're saying is that bhakti doesn't have any cause outside itself. As we see in the 11th canto, I think it's in the third chapter of the 11th canto, Bhaktya Sanjataya Bhaktya, that um, bhakti generates bhakti, that we attain sadhana bhakti by the association of bhaktas, which itself is bhakti. And we attain bhava bhakti by engaging in our sadhana, our spiritual practice, our cultivation, active cultivation, ongoing active cultivation of a loving service attitude for Krishna. And we attain prema as that bhava, that ecstatic, that bhakti based on ecstatic feelings that are growing in the heart of the living entity as that matures. That bhava, that spiritual ecstasy grows into prema. And even in prema, there are different stages, especially and how many stages there are depend on the particular flavor or nature of a particular devotee's love. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that when we're talking about Dharma, he makes this point that Prabhupada makes very clearly. When we're talking about Dharma here, we're talking about Padadharma, and Padadharma means Bhakti Yoga. This is the real business of the living entity. It's our nature, Jiver Swarupahoy Krishnair Nityadas, that the eternal nature, the eternal form, Swarupa, our own form of each of the jivas, each of the living entities, is as an eternal servant to Krishna. We're all meant to do whatever it is we can to try to give pleasure to Krishna. So, and he said, Vishwanath Chakravarti, and he makes these same arguments at the very beginning of his little book, Madhurya Kadambani, which explores the 9 different stages of bhakti, from Shraddha, from initial faith to prema, that Srila Rupa Goswami mentions in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And so he says, we can't even say that the Lord's mercy is the cause, because that means, well, if some people get bhakti and some people don't, that means the Lord's uh, the Lord's mercy isn't absolute, because that means that maybe it's conditional or something, but that's not the case either. It's all, that the bhakti comes from bhakti itself, and because it's not caused by anything other than bhakti itself. And bhakti is certainly not caused, Jiva Goswami or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur argues in Madhurya Kadambini. It's certainly not caused by pious activities. Pious activities are helpful, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, unless unless we become free from impious activities or sinful activities, things that entangle us, especially in the lower modes of nature, passion and ignorance, um, and build up a pattern of activities that are actually favorable. we can't really get devotional service. But these things aren't the cause. This freedom from sin and engaging in, you know, in religious activities, these things aren't the cause of bhakti either. Bhakti comes from the bhaktas. We get bhakti from the bhaktas. So it's in that sense that Lord Chaitanya says that the root cause of devotional service and the sense of bhakti in anyone's heart is the association of devotees. But that's also bhakti. So this is a huge point. And unless the bhakti that we get from those bhaktas is that pure bhakti, not tinged with any kind of selfish desire. Bhagavatam calls it cheating desire, right? Kaitava. Um, uh, we have to, it has to, our bhakti needs to be completely free from any tinge of any desire other than pleasing Krishna. That's not really going to satisfy the self. And so only if it's free of these other things, actually pure, um, as Prabhupada says, unalloyed devotional service, not mixed with other motivations, with other desires. Only that kind of bhakti is actually going to satisfy the real self. And if that's the case, if the self is actually satisfied by this pure devotional service, there isn't anything that can create a real obstacle to it. Nothing can stop it. We do. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur discusses this in early chapters of Madhurya Kadambini. We do run into bumps. At the beginning, the path is narrow, it's steep, it's uneven, and it's twisty. And so we will run into bumps along the way, but nothing can stop it. Nothing can stop it. Anyway, we are at just about at time. So I'm going to stop and see if we have a couple minutes of discussions.
Maharaj, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the personal touch which you added to the discussion this morning, discussing the letter that you found from your mom and things like that, to highlight the depth of some of those relationships. I also really like the point you made that it's not like it's not like association with devotees is a cause or a product of devotional service. It is devotional service. So I think that will come as a great comfort to perhaps as a great comfort, but also as a caution to some. It's devotional service, so that means you have to take it seriously. Associating with devotees, you have to treat them, nicely and so on, which sometimes you might just think, oh, I'm just, what do they say? Shooting the shit, whatever. But it's like, devotees are very dear to Krishna, so yeah.
Yeah, and we will make mistakes. We will mess up even in our relationships with devotees. Um, we we do that frequently, and just as we see in any other relationship, ultimately we realize that the relationship, maintaining and growing the relationship with devotees is more important than anything else, more important than protecting our ego. One of the things that I learned in marriage, and I'm afraid I didn't learn it as quickly as I would like once it did dawn on me, was that when a disagreement came up, what was actually more important to me than being right, which was as a smart but insecure person, was always very important to me. It always seemed really important to me. Being able to establish that what I said was actually right. Um, it began to dawn on me at a certain point that what was more important than being right, what was more important than winning the argument was the relationship. So, when we do find ourselves caught up in behavior that might threaten that relationship, we check ourselves and correct ourselves. We apologize uh, we make a promise to try to do better, that we will do better the next time. Maybe not perfectly, but better than today. And that's our whole thing. Um, Perfection is an elusive goal, illusory and elusive goal, because even within perfection, there's always growth. As I mentioned, even within prema, there are different stages, and all the way up to uh, all the way up to Mahabhava, which pretty much is the sole property of Srimati Radharani. Although there are little bits of that Mahabhava that some of those connected with her, her friends, their maidservants, and even some of the cowherd boys can have a little pinch of, certain cowherd boys who have a particular connection with Radharani. And so, there's always growth, always room for growth. Yeah, it's all bhakti. We're this struck me as I was walking in the Rath Yatra parade the other day, taking Lord Jagannath, mostly taking Lord Balaram down to the ocean in the Rath Yatra in LA, is that it's all mercy and we're swimming in an ocean of mercy. And I thought, yeah, body surfing, swimming, body surfing, diving in an ocean of mercy. That mercy is shared. Krishna's mercy is shared with us by the devotees with whom we associate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the phrase, which, yeah, like the motto, which sometimes I hear, always better service. Also, you know,
How's that
in
again?
always better service,
Oh, I
always
like
better
that.
service. Yeah. Then I was thinking, how can I apply this to my devotional relationships? So, anyway, hopefully I can think of that as I am associating with devotees. I can think always better service.
Mm, yeah.
Okay, well,
But
we,
sometimes we say practice makes perfect. That's a kind of a saying we have in English, but I
yeah,
don't like that. I think practice makes for progress,
yeah, yeah,
and
that's more
that's
practical.
perfection.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
we're getting purified, we're getting better over time. Yeah. Okay, well, everyone, we're lucky because Maharaj is doing a double header this week. So come back tomorrow for more with Ashram Maharaj.
he's lucky too.